So good morning. This is Natalie Gilley with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota, and we're going to go ahead and get started today. This is the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar for February 2023, and I'm excited to get things started today. I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we'll kick off this webinar. So today's topic is building community with 30 days of biking, and we're on February 15th, 2023. This is the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar. So today we'd like to get to know the group and the folks that are in the room today. And if you could type into the chat box your name, location, and then the icebreaker question for today. Who's your favorite bike collaborator? So as we get to know the folks that are participating in the webinar today, this is relative to our topic, and we really want to hear a little bit from you about who that might be in your life and who's inspired you. This is the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network. Our purpose statement is to connect local bike walk leaders to share stories and ideas about how they're lifting up the walking and biking culture in their communities. We have a land acknowledgement statement. We want to acknowledge that we occupy the ancestral land of the several indigenous groups, including the Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Cheyenne, Oto, Iowa, and Meskwaki people. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. We affirm the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities. Despite centuries of colonial violence, this is still and always will be Indigenous land. Indigenous peoples are still here, demonstrating innumerable talents and gifts in the midst of continued oppression. They must be celebrated and uplifted. You'll see here, there's a link on the screen, and Ted will probably pop that into the chat box here. If you'd like to click on that link, you can find out what land you are located on. So feel free to use that tool to learn a little bit more. So the Walk Bike Fun application deadline has been extended. Host site applications are still being accepted through February 17th. So please pass the word and let people know. If you have questions, you can direct those to Angela at bikemn.org or go to our website to get a little more information at walkbikefun.org. So this is helpful information and an exciting program to teach the youth walking and biking. Another Walk Bike Fun plug here for the LaPorte School District. Bikemn, in partnership with HRDC up here in the North Woods of Minnesota, is offering teacher trainings. And this is a virtual training on Wednesday, April 19th from 12 to 4, and then on-site training in person Thursday, April 27th, 1 to 5. So that's LaPorte, Minnesota, up here in the North Woods, and thanks to funding through the statewide Health Improvement Partnership. So some of the folks that are on this webinar today may also be members of the Safe Routes to School network. The network also holds monthly webinars similar to this network, and the topics that are coming down the line here on Thursday, March 2nd from 10 to 11. The Safe Routes to School network will be covering the topic of getting ready for Bike to School Day. In April on the 6th from 10 to 11, the topic will be centering climate action in Safe Routes to School. And on May 4th, from 10 to 11, the topic will be making the most of statewide student data in Safe Routes to School. So if you'd like to join the Minnesota Safe Routes to School network, you can email Julie J at movemn.org. So lots of great topics coming down the line here in the discussion around Safe Routes to School. So without further ado, I'd like to make an introduction here for our first speaker today. Many of you may already know this person and have seen him speak. He's a returning presenter on the panel here for the Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network, Patrick Stephenson. Bikes have run Patrick's world since 2009, when he first began bike commuting from his apartment in St. Paul to an advertising agency in Minneapolis. He's the co-founder of 30 Days of Biking and the Joyful Riders Club, which create community around bikes all over the world. And he's the former co-host of NPR News's podcast, Pedal Hub. He was named the Bicycle Community Champion of 2017 by the Bicycle Alliance Minnesota, and City Pages called him the Bike Messiah in 2017 in their People issue. This is a true story. Twin Cities resident, he's been a Twin Cities resident since 2006 and declared that he would not be a biker if not for the world famous Midtown Greenway and Minneapolis's incredible infrastructure, which has only gotten better and better over time. Welcome so much to the webinar, Patrick.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Okay. The main thought I want to start with today and that I want to leave you with, like the big takeaway, is you don't have to do this alone. I feel like bikers in general are very solitary, self-reliant people. And when it comes to organizing, that can actually do you wrong. So you don't have to do this alone. My presentation today is about partnerships. How do you build them to strengthen your bike organizing? Next slide, please. So Natalie already gave me my introduction, so I won't repeat myself, but you can see the logos here on the right are for the Joyful Riders Club and 30 Days of Biking. Both of these efforts focus on building community around biking. I became a dad in 2017. I've since fallen in love with cargo bikes. You can see here my Turn GSD. I've also fallen in love with my Turn GSD e-cargo bike in particular. That's my partner in biking is my bike. I'll say partner over and over again. Just really hammer it home. So after a quiet 2020 for obvious reasons and a brief resurgence at the end of 2021, we organized or supported 15 social rides or events in 2022. That included the 30 Days of Biking kickoff ride, an Art of World ride, DJ dance rides, a beach ride, a spa ride, a vintage arcade ride, and much more. We pulled off these rides thanks to support from great people and organizations in our community. In particular, we found a new home base for our social rides at Graze Provisions and Libations, a food hall in the North Loop. You could say we found our footing again in 2022, in large part thanks to our partnerships. So the 30 Days of Biking kickoff ride that you can see here, the photo was actually taken by our partner Free Will Bike. That was our most ambitious event of 2022 and required, as such, the most partners. Each of these partners helped us meet a need that we couldn't meet on our own. Those included marshaling rides, providing a meeting spot, providing a spot for our after party, helping us provide bike parking and raffle items. The sort of like the partners were essential to the experience, and it all came together at this big old kickoff ride with like 300 people at it. So that's a photo from the ride right there. So my original partner on these events was Mario Macruso. He's the co-organizer for me with 30 Days of Biking and the Joyful Riders Club. He was my original bike partner. He helped me realize I didn't have to do everything on my own, which was very essential for me at the very beginning of this when I first started doing bike organizing, because I was like, I just got to be everything. I got to be everything to everybody. I got to lead the rides. I got to promote the rides. But that's not sustainable. So Mario wanted to help out. He actually went for a ride with me together in the winter of 2010, and he asked, how can I help? And my first answer was that he could help lead the social rides because he's such a great leader. He knows the routes, he knows everything. And I have my own strengths. So like I'm a promoter, I'm like a big social media guy, and our strengths complement each other. And that's where that first originating partnership began for me and Mario. And without him, I could not do any of this pretty much. Like I would be solo and it would not work. So he's the magic that makes it work. It's our partnership together. So like, why should you go about building bike partnerships? I think what I've gotten at is that you shouldn't have to go about it alone, but there's also some very concrete benefits to building great partnerships. I have some of them listed here. You can access new resources, expertise, and networks. You can broaden your reach. You can reach new audiences and grow your community. You can leverage the strengths of other organizations, like, for example, the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota for letting me speak today and spread the word about 30 Days of Biking. I couldn't think of the word spread. You can make bike community organizing more sustainable for yourself. And I think that's especially important because many of us do this as a hobby that we fit into our spare time. So it has to be sustainable. It has to fit into your life. It's something that can't wear you out. Otherwise, you might get burnt out. And then also through partnerships, you share in the joy of creating something really awesome and joyful. So you can see right here, like when you get people together like this, it's a really special vibe and it's a special experience for people, and partnerships are core to that. So how do you go about doing this? I get asked this all the time. Like, how did you make that happen? How did you make that partnership happen? Honestly, it's as simple sometimes as just sending an email and starting the conversation. So first, if you want to put some strategic thinking into it, I would consider the goals, values, and resources that complement yours. Like, look around your community, find an organization that is on sort of on the same page as you, right? Like you want to find somebody who's aligned with you. Obviously, you want to find partners who are engaged in promoting bike community and infrastructure because you want them to be like share your bike mission. And then finally, you contact your potential partner and make the ask while considering how you can meet their needs as well as your own. So in my day job, I actually work in proposal writing, and the general structure of proposal writing and persuasion is that you start out with an understanding of your audience and what they're looking for. You don't talk about yourself at first, you talk about who you're talking to at first. That's how you reach somebody. So you start that conversation, you make it about them and their need and talk about how you'll meet their need. And then you go from there and you just start talking. Next, it's all about maintaining good and proactive communications. A partnership is a relationship just like any relationship. So that can mean scheduling check-ins to ensure everyone's on the same page and address any issues. I found it's especially important to hold up, and this is obvious stuff, but hold up your end of the deal. So anything you say that you're going to do, you show up and you deliver on it, because you want to be consistent and reliable. And then ultimately you report on the success of the event and how they contributed so they can see like, this is a good partnership. We work well together. We're a good fit. That's how you maintain that relationship. So I think it's also important to really celebrate your successes together. I have a photo here of Luke Breen from Perennial Cycle. Luke Breen is the owner of Perennial Cycle, and he works on the pastry rides that happen every April. You can see he's kind of celebrating and just excited about the family ride that they put together for Perennial Cycle last April. I think it's really important for any partnership, any project you work on, not to just be like, all right, that's done, let's move on. You want to celebrate your successes together. Whether that's a happy hour, coffee together, a party, you can straight up do a party. Just remember to celebrate and not just move along, so that you really strengthen your partnership. And remember to stay in touch and adjust your partnership as needed. So if there's something that goes wrong, if there's something that could be adjusted for the future, if they have feedback, you want to hear them out. Just like any relationship, a good partnership requires really good communication. So you want to just strengthen that bond all along the way. And it's all about talking, having touch points, getting together for coffee, beer, ice cream, a cider together, any of that stuff. I'm trying to be healthy for the Minnesota Department of Health. Have a kombucha. And the result of all of these partnerships, like, why do you do this work in the first place? Why do you put in the work to build these partnerships, to organize the rides, to advocate for bikes like we all do? The important part is community, because when we all come together, it's a shared experience and we build something special together. So building partnerships takes time and effort, but the benefits are well worth it. So you should stay committed to your partnerships and work together to achieve your shared goals. That's the end result. It's important to focus on the why, and it's important to focus on the result. So now I want to queue up a special guest that we have here today, Eric Moran. I worked with Eric this past year on the DJ bike rides. You can see the awesome setup that we put together for the DJ rides. Eric Moran has been a lifelong bike rider since childhood and a club and rave DJ since the early 2000s. Eric is a champion of inclusivity and accessibility, and he strives to ensure that we are doing what we can to combat climate change while having fun. Eric is an amazing partner. I have loved our partnership, so I wanted him to chime in today about the work that we did together. Eric, are you there?
I am here. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Eric, can you just talk a little bit more about why you wanted to partner on these rides and why it was important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Every Joyful Riders ride, or every like 30 days of biking ride that I had been on with you, and it's always been so inclusive. It's been so exciting, and people that don't normally do a lot of biking will find that if you go on a group ride, you always have so much more fun. That combined with adding the element of live music on a ride, it just gets everybody all jazzed up and ready to ride, and especially on rides like this that are that are all ages, and they're, we had on this ride that we did last July, we ended up having a few people under the age of 7 riding along with us and enjoying the entire ride. And so just knowing how easy all of these things are and how exciting they are for people to see happening in real time is phenomenal.
Yeah, it was awesome to create something special with you. So we can see the trailer that we have here with all of your bike gear on it. Can you talk about how you organized your bike DJ setup and like what the process was? Okay, first of all, let's pull it back. I want to pull it back for a second. How did you even think of starting to do these DJ bike rides? Like, what was the inspiration?
So over in the UK, there's an individual that has a bike, a front trike set up with a DJ, with all his DJ equipment on it, and he was organizing rides in 2021. And so I think I reached out to you, Patrick, in early 2022, and it was the half joking, half serious, hey, we should get something like this organized here. And so you then in turn saw that as a full serious, and we reached out to Luke at Perennial Cycle. Yep. And Luke said, hey, I've got this trailer. Let's figure out how we can utilize this trailer and figure out what we need for equipment. And so we went down, talked with Luke for a little while. I brought some of my equipment just as a test, and you and I rode around a few blocks just to test things out and see how things would look. And from there, we went full steam ahead and figuring out what else we needed to go and do this as an actual event.
Nice. And then how did you think about like, in terms of the actual gear, like, how did you imagine that you could fit all this gear onto the back of a bike trailer? Like, what was the process there for making that work?
So with being a DJ for most of my adult life, I've known what equipment I should be looking at, what kind of equipment I should be using. So I worked with Luke from Perennial. Luke built the stand that you can see there. He painted it a bright green and added some color to it. And so I worked with Luke to measure and say, okay, here's where the speakers are going to be mounted. Here's where the DJ equipment's going to be mounted. And we're going to have a battery that's a part of this as well. So Luke helped put together the actual setup for all of that. With this, I found some speakers that were battery powered as well. So that way we wouldn't have to rely on separate batteries, but they were light enough that we could carry on the bike. And it wasn't something that was weighing us down too much. Additionally, there was a separate battery that we ended up using for the DJ controller, and everything worked out phenomenally with all the equipment that we had.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of partnerships, like the word quintessence of it's like, this is the awesome partnership that we built last year in terms of delivering this. It was magic, like working with you both on this. So I just love it. I think this is a perfect example of a great partnership, and I'm excited to keep going with it. So in terms of where you want to see these rides go, like what is the plan for this year? I mean, I know some ideas, but like from your perspective, what do you want to do with these rides in 2023?
Sure. So last summer, we really had only planned this as a one-off, like let's figure out what this looks like. And we did the initial ride, and then we had some organizations and individuals reach out to us to ask us to do rides for them as well. So we worked with Our Streets Minneapolis. We worked with Elliot Payne as he launched his re-election campaign for 2023. And so going forward this year, I want to do more of the same. I want to do a lot of these community rides where these are just inclusive rides that anybody can join along on. I also want to see I know there's going to be some want from the community as well to do separate one-off rides, and trying to figure out how we build all those into our schedule without overwhelming ourselves, since especially you and I are both parents, and we need to make sure we're not killing ourselves trying to have too much fun.
Totally. I agree. It's all about making it sustainable. So as I was talking to Natalie before this all started, and I was like, Eric is involved in some amazing initiatives as well. You ran for Park Board, you're building the roller rink in North Minneapolis. So these are impressive initiatives. How do you go about building partnerships for those types of things? Like, what's your approach to building partnerships?
Sure thing. I really find it's best to meet with individuals one-on-one and understand where they're coming from and what exactly they're looking for. So in terms of the roller rink, which I'm still working on, and it's progressing, albeit a little bit slower than I wanted to. This has been just meeting with business leaders, meeting with elected leaders, and understanding how these things can benefit the community, and then understanding how these other individuals can also help us, even if it's, not monetarily, but just understanding like how do we work together to make sure that we both are getting all the things that we need to.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of lessons or tips for building partnerships?
I would just say make sure you're meeting, you're being as flexible as you can with these individuals, especially if you're approaching something that you may really want the same thing, but their approach is going to be completely different. Just make sure you're hearing them out and working with them to make this it'll end up being a win for both of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
So watch out for our upcoming DJ rides. Those will be linked on the Joyful Riders Club page. So those will be promoted there. Yeah, DJ ride. This is from our very first test ride. And I think you can see on our faces how we felt about it. It was magic. When we first realized what it was like to do this test ride together, and like the vibes that we were creating and that people along the ride were dancing along with us, it was very special. It was a cool thing to start with. Oh, are you gonna
I was
say
going to
something?
add in there, we expected on the first ride, I think we were expecting maybe like 20 or 30 people.
Mhm.
And I think we had somewhere around 120-ish people that ended up joining along. And we had people that joined along on the ride as we were progressing as well, which, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Pretty awesome. Cool. Then thanks, Eric. I really appreciate you contributing to this. I'll move on to our next slide.
Patrick, I'll go ahead and switch to the next slide. I just wanted to pause for one moment because before we move on to the next one, I wanted to just direct some questions that we're getting through the chat box. It's kind of active in the chat box. And Dan, people were asking about whether or not there was a ride that was maybe being planned for Bike to Work Day or some of the bike events during Bike Month in May. So I don't know, I guess this could be a question for Dan or for Patrick. Do you have anything related to the music and the vibe and all of this that you were just describing here that's happening in May during Bike to Work Day?
We hadn't planned anything right now for Bike to Work Day. We are thinking that we'll plan something for the 30 Days of Biking Kickoff ride. Like that could be the beginning of our season, and we're going to figure things out from there. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Eric?
Not yet, but yeah, Patrick and I met last Friday and discussed all of this. And so so we're in the process of figuring out how we want to work that 30 Days of Biking Kickoff. And yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot more events this summer with that.
We want to dance together a lot. We actually met at Graze Food Hall.
Exciting. And that's relevant to today's presentation as well, because we'll get into the next slide in a moment here and then talk about an additional collaboration that involves food and drinks, not only music and biking, but then we're going to add another element here, which is also just, ups the game on these community events, makes them, incredibly fun, gives people a chance to feed their families as part of this, because, making sure that the children are fed and that people are not getting crabby, and that you get everyone having a good time and bring the family together. As you can see in the picture here too, you have a young child that's participating, and these bike rides are very family friendly, and the kids love the music too, and the food and the community and that group of people that come together to ride bikes. So very cool. So Patrick, I'll go to the next slide here and hand it back over to you to keep the conversation going here. And we'll try to watch for if you think of questions that you have for Eric or Patrick, or as we're discussing this other additional collaboration, feel free to put them in the chat box. We'll also pause and give you an opportunity to go on camera and ask your questions live if you'd like. So we'll do that in just a couple of minutes here.
I would also add that food halls have bathrooms, which are very important on bike rides as well, because you need a nice solid place to use the bathroom if you need that. So yeah, Graze has amazing food and has bathrooms. Great promotion. So now I want to cue in Dan Newkirk, who's the general manager of Graze, who's also joining us as a special guest today. Graze was an amazing partner for 30 Days of Biking in the Joyful Riders Club in 2022. We were looking for a new home for our rides, and Graze gave that to us. They coincidentally are located about 2 blocks from my house, which is really nice. But also they have amazing food selections. They're a great local food hall. They have, it's kind of, the concept started as food trucks that would have a home and a physical space. And I can let Dan talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, it's just a special place for us. And that's where we hosted our kickoff ride. And that's where we've had our monthly rides ever since then as well. So those are starting up again soon. I'll read Dan's bio here for you. He's a restaurant veteran, avid city cyclist when times allow. I just love the 30 Days of Biking initiative, especially since we're the most bike-friendly city in the country. I'm the general manager at Graze Provisions and Libations. I'm all about mixed media activities. Drink a little, bike a little, repeat. Welcome, Dan. Thanks for joining us today. Uh-oh, is Dan here? Oh, no.
Patrick, we might have put him on the spot here before he was ready to, to present. Well, thank you for describing, this bio and introducing Dan. And maybe we can send a message out to him to just see if he's going to be able to pop on here. Patrick, are you able to reach out to him to just see if he's planning to join? And then we'll come back to him. So let's take a couple of questions and then we'll come back to Dan and then put him up live if we get that opportunity today. So in the meantime here, this is 30 Days of Biking. A lot of the time in the spring, we offer this opportunity for Patrick to speak, to talk about 30 Days of Biking. And each year it's like, all right, are we going to feature a similar topic year over year? But I know when Patrick and I were talking a little bit about this webinar as we were preparing for today, and you've heard this throughout the presentation today, is that those partnerships and those collaborations are so incredibly important. How do you get them to happen? How do you make that happen? And, as Dan mentioned too, the conversation is already happening to plan for the season. It's February, there's still snow, but, there's a lot of work that goes into planning these for the season well in advance of the first ride and the kickoff and all of that, to bring those partnerships together and have those conversations and collaborate. So, Patrick, do you mind if I bring it back to one of your other slides while we're just trying to reconnect with Dan? There was one that I was wondering if we could just go back to briefly and just talk a little bit about here. This was the benefits to the partnerships. And you mentioned access, reach, leverage, community, and then just sharing the joy. And I think these were all really important topics. And each one of these bullet points we could probably talk about in length. But I was just wondering if any of these topics here that are listed on the benefits to great partnerships, if you wanted to expand on any of this a little bit more, Patrick, to discuss how to make this happen, how to get this, successful. And, obviously you're drawing a huge crowd of people in your bike rides now. The pictures really show that. But there's a lot of communities that are on the call today that are from folks from communities around the state of Minnesota, that this could be the population of their community. How do you make this happen and bring out those folks to ride? Because there's so much work that goes into planning and to making this happen to get people to show up. So did you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think something important here that I is sort of the originator for great partnerships is first getting a start with whatever initiative you want to work on, whether it's a ride or a party or any other kind of bike event, and determining what you can't deliver on your own, because that will shape what you're looking for. So if you're looking to grow your community and go outside your own friendship group, then you want to partner with someone who maybe manages their own community or is a community leader for themselves. If you want a great place to meet that has food, you would reach out to a food hall or a brewery or a restaurant or a coffee shop, wherever would provide you with a place to meet. So I think it's all about delivering or determining your need at first and determining what you want. I think as you get deeper into it, you might have deeper needs. Like I want to have a rolling DJ on my bike ride. That's a need that wouldn't occur to me at first. That didn't for maybe 10 years into the rides. But yeah, I mean, it starts with a need, and then it's all about determining what their need is and seeing where you can link up. I think it's just like we are surrounded by resources. We're surrounded by people who are passionate about what they're doing as well. You look at something like Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota, like we partner with you as well. And I mean, things like Ted going to a donut shop and having or going to a meeting point and having donuts outside. I can't afford to pay for donuts for everybody. So that's something that a partner can do. They can sponsor us with a donut fund. I'm going to riff a little bit here. Okay, Ted, can you chime in on something about why you wanted to partner with us and what a partnership means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we could obviously talk for hours on 30 days of biking alone. One thing I wanted to point to and kind of relates to Eric's question as well, but I posted a link to a listing that I put together on the Bike and website, and these are bike clubs and teams, and those are loose titles. And Joyful Riders is listed among many of those across the state, and this is a great way to connect with some groups who already exist. So you don't necessarily need to recreate the wheel, but we're seeing, what Patrick has really emphasized is there's been a lot of great partnerships with local bike shops that really want this kind of programming to be associated with their shop. So that's where we've seen a lot of success here in like the metro area. I assume that model can work elsewhere. I mean, we've seen it like Ely, like the kick sled cyclery. That's where a lot of weekly bike rides take place. Nicollet Bike Shop in Mankato. They've had a lot of really awesome programming throughout the winter months. So that's really where I would, if I was trying to find something like this in my community that I wasn't familiar with, that's where I would start, is asking my local bike shop about, what are you already doing? What can I be a part of? Or what can I help do? What is it that you envision? Luke is at Perennial has done a lot of really innovative things. I mean, there are rides where you have to sign up to even know like where the meetup is. And then there'll be some live music there and some other things like that. So yeah, I mean, I love the 30 days of biking, format, the DIY part of it. I mean, Patrick, would often post like, some really stormy days where he'd be, riding like a kid's bike down like the Target aisles or something like that. And he's like, this counts, everybody. Like, we're not trying to, this isn't like a super athletic endurance event. If you're into those, great, but that's not what that is. It's really just to find a community of people that are trying to, kind of find that shared enthusiasm for bicycling. And if you can have enthusiasm for bicycling in Minnesota in April, then that will carry you through, our fair weather season. So yeah.
I think bike shops are a really good starting point. Yeah, because they're engaged in the same mission that you are. They want to spread love for bicycling and get people together around bikes. Bike advocacy organizations like Bike MN, Our Streets Minneapolis, all these kinds of things. I would not neglect the lifestyle stuff too. In 2022, we reached out and partnered with Watershed Spa. That's a special experience that's across the river from me here in Minneapolis. They have a sauna, they have a steam room, they have a cold pool, they have a jacuzzi. So at first you might be like, how does that apply to biking? Like, what would that mean for biking? How is that connected? But we did a ride there and we brought everyone in and we had them engage in this special experience. And it's a very similar thing for a ride. Like, this is a special thing that somebody built in a local space. And it's also just nice to hang out together in a jacuzzi, right? So like things like that, like what's a special experience that you want to create for people? Can you bring them to a local business that really wants to bring people into their business? I think that's a natural one too, as far as who to reach out to.
Thanks, Patrick. And I want to redirect here. I see someone has raised their hand. Dorian, you go ahead and take the floor.
Ted, should I use your microphone? Hi, everyone. I'm really, really fond of saying you can't just build it and hope that people come. I use that in my testimony to the legislature. So they emphasize that, our public agencies need engagement and education and program money, in addition to just infrastructure money. And this is one of the most magical engagement strategies out there. So I think this is, this is a partnership that we really, really welcome, and we'll do anything to help 30 days of biking and spread it all throughout the state And with our resources, encourage other organizations in other states to do it too. So thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Dorian. I see in the comments here, there's a question about finding ride leaders, and I think like other people could have advice on this one too. So Eric said, finding ride leaders is a major pain point for us in Rochester. We see about a third to a quarter of our city population turnover every 3 to 5 years, particularly in the 24 to 35-year-old age range. What, if any, advice would you give on finding willing and eager ride leaders who know the local trail networks well enough to lead group rides? So in my case, that was exactly the issue I faced, is that I was not a trained ride leader. I didn't know the trail system because I was still pretty new to biking when we first started doing this. And I found one person who could help with that in Mario Macaruso. And so if you start with one person, that does limit the number of rides you can organize. It limits your capacity, but I think it's a good starting point. And what we've seen from doing these rides is that as you organize them, as you put the rides together, as people come along, you're actually training them to be ride leaders as you're doing it. They're learning along the way. So it becomes a school for ride leadership. And we've actually had people who started out coming on our rides eventually lead rides with us when we couldn't attend as guest leaders. So it's almost like you're building a school. So I would say start small with that and just find one person and build from there. I'm wondering if anybody else has any other advice on finding ride leaders though.
I just want to add a quick note on that one. So we like through the last riding season, we had a weekly ride. It's just kind of getting past that point of kind of whatever the discomfort is, or I guess it's probably mostly discomfort of just actually getting people to volunteer towards those, because we're having regular people showing up. Like, have you ever gone as far as to say, hey, you've been here a few times, it's your turn? Like, how forward, I guess, would you be if that's an approach that you've taken, or kind of any other advice on that front would be really useful for us down here?
That's a really good question. I think from our perspective, I would say more pitch it as, are you willing to lead, and would you be willing to do this, and offer it as an opportunity, and make sure that they feel supported, and how, like, being like, okay, yeah, you're going to be the ride leader, but we'll be there for you along the way. We'll be riding alongside you, and sort of making it like a special creation that they can do. So I would offer it up as an opportunity, and maybe you could even put the word out, like at the start of the ride when you're making announcements, like, we're looking for a ride leader for next week. Who would be willing to lead the ride, or just do some individual outreach as well. Yeah, it's a toughie. That ride leadership part is really tough. I struggle with. I can lead rides, but I do not really enjoy it. I enjoy being the sweeper who's at the back of the ride, who's taking care of everybody, making sure everybody's safe and rolling along with us. So it's important to find those people who really excel at that. It's a special skill set for sure.
Patrick, can I add something to what you just shared as well?
Yes.
So this is Natalie. I'm with Bikeman, but I also lead a Pedaling Ninjas bike club up here in Bemidji, Minnesota. And so I play ride lead, but I also wanted to recognize the other roles that people that show up for these rides every week provide to the group. You have, someone who's in charge of like snacks and string cheese and crackers for the kid, a snack for the kids, or someone who might be really skilled at doing some wrenching. So if someone gets a flat tire, they're the one that's going to help out with that. And then someone else, like, hey, they don't really want to do those more technical aspects, but they'll have the sign-in sheet and collect registrations for the ride. So like, I think there's somebody who can kind of like be the ride lead from, there's all these different roles. And one, obviously somebody being a ride lead is really important role, but the role of, if you have a family-friendly ride where you have a lot of children that are joining, and you have burleys, and you have a lot of different things going on, that identifying what those strengths are among the group is really helpful when you have a group ride like that, especially when it gets bigger, and that they're playing that role to help make those rides successful and keep the group rolling when these different things do come up along the way.
You bring up a good point too about mechanical support. One thing that has really made the Joyful Riders Club ride special in the past is that we have had mechanics along on the rides. So we partnership with like Farmstead Bike Shop, Free Will Bike, Bonesaw Cycling Collective has provided mechanical support. That's someone who comes along the ride, and in case there's a flat, they can help with that. It's someone whose specific purpose is to be there to help with those basic mechanical fixes. And as a ride organizer, that gives me a good feeling of security that if we run into an issue, there will be someone there who can handle it. And that's their purpose. And what's funny is that we never, I mean, knock on your heart, we never really face mechanical issues on rides that are that serious. It's always like a quick solve. So they're usually there just to ride along with us and have fun. But I think mechanical support is a really good way you could build a partnership with a local bike shop. Just like, would you be willing to come along and have some visibility on the rides and have some tools? That's a great way to partner right there.
That's excellent to hear, Patrick. It's like there's so many elements to doing these group rides, and they play important parts. And I see that in the chat box, someone has mentioned that for the Utaples club ride, those ride leaders and sweeps get free beer and kombucha after the ride. So that's pretty cool. So there's a perk. We talked about earlier, there was mention of donuts, and there's mention of some other cider and other types of things that people might enjoy during a ride. So that's cool. So there's a reward. The other thing that I wanted to mention too is that if you're leading group rides and you have a series of group rides during the season, you can find your local partnerships. And so this is all about partnerships and collaboration today. We haven't touched on too much discounts at local businesses that support biking. So if your group shows up there, everybody that's part of that group might get a 10% discount on their bill or something along those lines. And you can do punch cards, or there's all kinds of different ways that you could have that partnership be visible to your group riders and offer those, you can do the legwork on that so that the riders then show up and then they get the benefit from that, and it's a draw for the club. So, there's one question that came up for you, Dan, a while back in the chat stream here. And this was, I want to just redirect back to this for one moment. People want to know, the inquiring minds want to know, what's your most requested song when you're on a bike ride?
We haven't had many requests yet, but when I do DJ, we've done, I think we're counting now 4 rides, Patrick.
Yeah.
And I try to keep it like high energy dance music is probably the best way of describing it. But then there's been a few, like I think on the last ride we did in November, at the end of the ride, I played a few Prince tracks as well. So just try to keep things that are getting people engaged in dancing.
Love it.
Cool. So I see Patrick, you added a comment in the chat box here. At the kickoff ride a few years ago, you gave away volunteers a 30 days of biking bag with coffee beans.
Yeah, we had a coffee sponsor. So they made a special type of, I guess, a grind for us, type of coffee. And we had the 30 days of biking bag of coffee beans where it had our logo on there. It was called the Rivet. It was by Bell Lab Coffee, and it was really delicious coffee. So that was one of our better like volunteer gifts, those coffee beans. It looks like, unfortunately, Dan wasn't able to make it today, but if you could go back to Dan's slide at the very end about Graze, I'll just talk a little about why I wanted to choose Graze as our partner. I think it's, so at first when we first started the Joyful Riders Club, we worked with Surly Brewing, who was a great partner for us. And I think the fact that it was specifically devoted though to beer was kind of a barrier for a lot of people, because it meant that if they didn't want to drink, they didn't want to come along on the ride. So that's a big barrier for a lot of people, and we don't want to have that be a problem. So Graze is great in that there is a bar there and there is beers if you want it, but there's also like a variety of food options. It's not like the single purpose of the setting, basically. So there's a variety of food options for all kinds of different appetites. It meets a variety of different needs. It obviously has a big open field in the front. It feels family friendly because it's a nice contained space when you're first meeting. So it's just a very special space for us. The fact that it was like right on the public transit line, I think actually behind Dan here, you can see the light rail kind of peeking through. That was very important to me that it was right there. It's right near the river trail. So it's just been a special spot for us. And I'm really glad that we found a new home for our rides in 2022 and 2023. It's a great spot. And I encourage you to check it out and try their new burger. Eric and I just had burgers last week, and their new burger there. What is the name of the burger spot that we went to, Eric?
I can't remember. It was sticking out and I needed it. It looked delicious, and it was delicious.
It's a smash burger. So yeah, go check out Graze. It's a really amazing local. Everything there is local. It's a locally owned food hall with locally owned food stalls. It's a really good variety of foods.
Cool. And Patrick, as people are listening, these are folks on the webinar today from across the state of Minnesota. So they might have their own local place, restaurant, coffee shop, donut shop, you know, whatever is the specialty in that particular part of the state, and maybe the draw for folks. You know, it's cool when you have that place where people can go to and to gather, and you know, it could be different depending upon where you're at. And these are actually fun things to hear about too. So as we talk about the bike clubs, and if there are communities and people listening today, sign up for 30 days of biking, get on the map with your community across the state of Minnesota, and let us know who you're partnering with, you know, and bring those comments back around in this discussion and dialogue with these folks who are leading these types of initiatives across the state, because that dialogue will help prompt maybe another idea or inspiration for something that folks might consider doing that they hadn't really thought about. So that's something I encourage you to do. Participate, and then share your stories and let us know where you're going to have your burger.
Absolutely. Oh, a call to action. Sign up for 30 days of biking at 30daysofbiking.com. It begins April 1st. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Our kickoff ride is taking place April 1st, 12 p.m. at Graze Provisions and Libations. It's going to be a slow pace, focus on togetherness. I think we only ride about 3 to 4 miles, so it's a very short distance. It's really all about just getting together and building partnerships. And if you have any questions, you can reach me at patioman@gmail.com or reach me on Twitter at patiomensch if you're still into Twitter, with everything that's going on with Twitter lately. It's complicated, but I'm still on there. Yeah, go for it. Reach out, build a partnership. Ooh, good question. Any chance of 30 days of biking being on non-corporate social media? Honestly, like I've had trouble having the capacity to bring 30 days of biking to any social media this year so far, just because I've been so busy. So I think, are you thinking of things like Mastodon, Marty?
Yeah, exactly. Mastodon.
Yeah, somebody reached out, actually, I think it might have been you, about bringing 30 days of biking to Mastodon, and that's still on my to-do list for the year. I think it's a natural fit. Yep. That's all I got. Any other questions?
Patrick and Dan, it's been great having you on. You know what, Eric?
Eric.
I apologize. I've called you Dan a couple times, I think, Eric. And
That's totally fine.
So Patrick and Eric, very good to have both of you on the webinar today. And Dan in spirit, I guess he's been with us today. So
Yeah.
And so we have heard a lot of really cool ideas. And hopefully people that are on this webinar are really inspired by what has been shared today. And if you do have questions, I really do encourage you to reach out to Patrick, and Patrick can get you connected with other folks and help give tips for what you might do in your own community. And also don't be afraid to try something new and to go out there and give it a go and see how it works and make adjustments as you go. So this is great. Thank you so much for being on the webinar today. We have a couple of closing slides here to wrap this up. Before I go to our closing slides, which are not related to the presentation of the content today, but related to biking. Does anyone else have any other questions for Patrick or for Eric? All right, so this is good. There's some chat box chatter going on here. So connect with each other, exchange contact information to make these local collaborations happen. So just a couple closing slides here. Save the dates. You may have seen recently just some things pop up on social media as we're talking about social media today. The St. Paul Classic is happening on Sunday, September 10th, 2023. Mankato River Ramble, Sunday, October 8th. 2023. So we have the dates up, and get involved as you would like and participate in the rides. Mark the dates. So this is the save the date. We have the dates up. And then just to close the webinar today, many of you may have attended the Minnesota Bike Walk Summit recently in St. Paul, and we wanted to extend a thank you to everyone who was at this event and participated, whether you participated in person or you participated remotely. We appreciate that connection. And I'd like to give an opportunity here for Dorian to share a few thoughts if you'd like to do that. Dorian?
Thanks, Natalie. I'm I'm really excited about what happened last Thursday. Lots of people attended and lots of meetings with legislators, lots of positive feedback. And the 2 days before the summit, Tuesday and Wednesday, I testified to the House and Senate in support of some of the bills we're working on this year. And the two big ones are House File 677, which is an omnibus bill, which has both policy and funding in it. It could increase the funding for active transportation and safe routes to school by an order of magnitude or more. So be watching what's going on, make sure your communities are engaged and ready to be there to apply for safe routes or active transportation grant money. The policy stuff is also exciting. The big one I'm most excited about is changing schools may teach bike and walk safety to must teach bike and walk safety. I think we're reaching right now, somewhere 40 or 50% of the schools in the state with walk bike fun, but I really think it should be 100% of them. And even if it's not teaching walk bike fun, it's important that they're communicating that safety message to their kids about biking and walking. The last thing that hasn't been introduced in bill form yet, but will soon, is an e-bike rebate bill. We're pretty excited about that. Should be a significant rebate scaled based on your taxable income. So if you have a lower income, you'll get a higher rebate. Higher income, you'll get a lower rebate, but it'll still, there'd still be a minimum on there. So I'm excited about that. Any questions? By all means, I think you probably all know my email address. It's just like everyone else, dorian@bikemn.org. Let me know if you have any questions. But take a look at House File 677. It does a lot of things. And if you have any questions about the details, let me know.
Thanks, Dorian, and thanks for leading that and testifying, as did Patrick Hollister. I'll give a shout out. He's on the webinar today as well. And Angela Olson and Helena Howard. Those are folks that all were, in addition to other folks too, but part of the biking community who played critical roles in what Dorian was talking about here, and sharing that enthusiasm and wanting to get these things moved forward. So thank you so much, Dorian, and for all who attended the summit. And it doesn't stop there. We'll keep going. And if there's anything that you guys need, definitely reach out to BikeMN, to any of the staff, and let us know. And we're here to support you and help move that forward. So you didn't miss out. If you weren't in attendance, you can still speak with your legislators, and we can help you get the tools to make that happen. So I'm just going to do a quick check in the chat box because I see there's a couple of comments here. It looks like lots of kudos to you, Patrick, and to Eric for presenting today. Great topics, great content. Thank you for your slides and pictures and everything that you've shared today. It's been incredible to connect with all the people here and also to share these stories. So thank you so much. And we appreciate the presentations today and all of the attendance today. So with all of that, I think I will go ahead and close the webinar for today. Join us again in March for our next Minnesota Bike Walk Leadership Network webinar. Thanks. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you. See you.